reason for turning one's back on husband and child and allowing oneself to be swallowed up in a city's seething mass of humanity, and then not even to send some sign of life. There was no other possible explanation. Of course it had something to do with the war. Matti's mother was Olavia Hartvigsen. Her maiden name was Storm, from a very good family on the landed estate in the north of the main island. An attractive girl who had maneuvered her way confidently and graciously through her childhood and adolescent years, before, in the final phase of the war, breaking with all the privileges accorded by Providence and going off to live with Johannes Hartvigsen, who was twice her age and whom not a single woman up to that time had dignified with a glance. The question was whether she had done this of her own free will. Hardly. Out of love? Not a chance. With suspicious intentions? Without a doubt. At least that meant the flight from Johannes was not forced upon her. With the consequence, however, that from then on the archipelago's daily lifeline was run not only by an abandoned husband, but also by his even more abandoned son, who day in, day out, sat on the swaying deck of the cutter with 3 fingers in his mouth, waiting for the boat to put in at some quay or other, such as Barrøy, so that his insides could settle for a moment, and one of the islanders might take pity on him with a kind word, which, of course, he never reciprocated, but acknowledged none the less. That was Ingrid's impression, with a slight flinch, which she could see now as she trudged south, carrying the puzzling letter that had nothing to do with the poor lad. Occasionally, 2 separate things happen concurrently and merge into one and the same wound in one's memory, except that you don't realize this until it is too late. So why didn't Ingrid pull herself together and tear open the envelope and read what Marianne had on her mind and get it over and done with? Ingrid wasn't ready. She carried on walking to Barrøy's southernmost point, to the bench, as they called it, the mighty Russian larch a storm had cast ashore at one time in her childhood, where she used to go to process her innermost thoughts, where she sat when the island threatened to become too small for her, when life threatened to come to a halt. And today, holding the letter from Marianne Volheim, she was petrified. 2. Mattis was on the face of it an ordinary lad, who had played on the beach and his father's small holding, in the fields and forests and snowdrifts, and had thrown his legs and arms about and laughed and cried like all other children, in no way different from them, except that, by and large, only his parents were able to recognize him from a distance, until he suddenly changed, from one day to the next, at a speed that only a child is capable of, towards the end of May. The first signs of this became apparent as Johannes Hartvigsen was sitting at the boy's bedside when he opened his eyes and saw his father's furrowed and bearded face, the morose expression of a man who neither knew nor cared what he looked like, to the sound of the rain hammering down on the rusty tin roof. Mattis used to call it thunder, and did so now. His father corrected him once again and repeated that the boy had never heard thunder, that it was rare in this part of the country. "That's rain you can hear, it's pissin' down." Mattis had to get up and put on his clothes now and board the boat with him. There would be no playing with Ulle in Sluter today. That mamma of yours has gone. "My mamma?" "Yes, your mamma." "Where is she, mamma?" Johannes was in no position to answer that question, and neither did he have the energy to speculate too deeply on the reasons for his wife, Olavia, leaving them. True, she had complained about Johannes being full of gloomy thoughts, a man with a gloomy disposition, which rubbed off on those around him. In other words, on her, a trait she had known nothing of before they had gotten